Hi everyone, this is Alan here, your tutor for the paper AAA, Advanced Audit and Assurance. So basically when it comes to the paper AAA, there are some recent changes that the paper have gone through, or not just the paper, the audit have gone through. So there are changes with regarding the quality management requirements or the quality control procedures while performing an engagement. So the current standards on the quality management area includes the international standards on quality management, that's the ISQM 1. Same as that, there are ISQM 2. Then there is changes in ISA 220, as well as there are also quality management for an audit of financial statements. So basically this video will be purely focused on the ISQM 1. There are some major reasons for making changes with regarding the quality control procedures. So basically, we know that it is the responsibility of every auditor to provide a quality engagement report at the end of every engagement. So there are some key principles that are underlying the quality standards that might affect an engagement result. So the quality standards are purely be focused on public interest, which means that it is the responsibility of the auditor to ensure that they are expressing an opinion, that they are providing a report that will be reliable for every person's and for every stakeholders actually. So it is a responsibility of the engagement partner as well as the team members to maintain professional skepticism and professional judgment throughout an engagement. However, there are several cases where an auditor might not be able to achieve this, and the major reason for that are the ethical threats that they will be facing while performing an engagement. So while there are several ethical implications or ethical requirements that have to be faced by the auditor, there will be threats that will affect them from achieving their objectives with regarding each of the ethical requirements. Thereby, the auditor will not be able to provide a proper opinion or an appropriate opinion on the company's financial statements, whatever may be the documents that they have to review and provide an assurance report. So here, the auditor have to take a proactive approach. They have to maintain a good quality management system rather than just having a tick box approach, which means that there will be several requirements that are being listed there common to every engagement, and the auditor is just checking whether they are complying with each of the regulations. So that won't work here. So here the auditor have to maintain a good quality assurance management system, or the auditor should ensure that they are meeting several requirements with regarding the ISQM 1 in order to ensure that they perform an engagement that provides an appropriate opinion or that provides an appropriate return on the client engagements. So that is what we are going to focus on, and that is a major reason why the key principles are being explained with regarding the quality standards. And in addition to the things that we have just mentioned, it is also very important to have good internal and external monitoring for firms, because the improved communication as well as internal to external parties and with those charged with governance and with regulatory authorities are all very important in order to ensure that the quality of the engagements are being maintained. So all these factors will be considered with regarding the ISQM 1, and we are going to have a discussion on the same. So now the new standard, ISQM 1. The quality management for the firm that perform audit or review of financial statements or other assurance and related service engagements. The ISQM 1 requires every firm to follow a principle-based approach, whereby the firm have to maintain the system of quality management. So basically when it comes to the system of quality management, here they requires every firm to maintain a specific system of quality management. Basically we know that every client will be different. Every client will be different on a number of ways, maybe on the basis of its size, on the basis of its operations, and so on. At the same time, every firm will also be different. So it is not possible for firm to maintain a common quality management process. Instead, they have to create a specific system of quality management for each engagement and for the firm. That will be specific for the firm. So the ISQM requires 8 components to be included, or the ISQM requires the 8 components to be considered while maintaining the system of quality management. The first one is the firm's risk assessment process, then the governance and leadership, relevant ethical requirements, acceptance and continuance of the client's relationship, then the engagement performance, resources, information and communication, and very finally monitoring and remediation process. So we will be focusing on each one of these now. So basically, to maintain a system of quality management, all these 8 components have to be considered. Out of which the very first one, that's a firm's risk assessment process. So basically, when it comes to the firm's risk assessment process, here it requires that every firm have to first of all list down their quality objectives. Well, every firm will be having a list of quality objectives that they need to achieve by maintaining the system of quality management. And definitely there will be multiple risk in relation to this as well. So there will be several factors that might limit them from achieving their quality objectives. So it is the responsibility of the firm to first of all establish all the risk out there. However, while considering the risk, that should be the specific risk, which means that the auditor need to consider the environment in which the firm works, as well as the technologies that are being employed by the firm or by their network firms, and they must also consider any external service providers work that they are being using. So it is not just a one-off process, it will be an ongoing monitoring process. So throughout the engagement, throughout being in the client's relationship, we must always consider the quality objectives as well as the risks that we face. So basically, when it comes to this approach, here we will be considering those risks that are specific to the firm. So well, we know that as the client portfolio will be different, the size of the firm will be different. So we must always emphasize on a specific risk assessment process. So in case if we focus on the specific risk assessment process, the main benefit is that we will be able to offer, or we will be able to finally provide a quality audit report or an engagement report that will be specific to that client itself. So the auditor will be focusing purely on the risk, and the auditor will be taking up the measures to overcome the risk that we face in achieving their quality requirements. So say for example, in case if the client is specifically being assessed, then if the auditor feels that it's a high risk client, the auditor will be able to devote the most important or the most quality managed audit procedures to that particular client. Say for example, the auditor will be able to devote the most well-trained individuals to perform this complex and risky audit. And in case if the auditor requests to issue a modified opinion at a point without any failure to do so, the auditor will definitely be provide that same report, that's a modified report, in case if the auditor understood the quality management process properly. So the auditor will be considering all the ethical threats at this case, and the auditor will also be taking adequate safeguards to overcome the ethical threats that they face while performing the engagement. And the most crucial point is that in case if we are considering the specific risk, so the specific risk will be arising in each of the specific firms, and it will not same for every firm or for every client. So the most crucial point is that the firm must ensure that they are devoting all their resources for the purpose of achieving the quality objectives, and they will be taking remedial actions in order to overcome the risk that will limit them from achieving these objectives. And that's all about the risk assessment process. So it is nothing but when a company is being audited by the audit firm, the auditor should ensure that they are assessing all the specific risks that for that particular client, as well as the specific risk that the audit firm might face on the basis of their size as well as the nature of operations. So when it comes to the exam, in the AAA exam, each candidate will be required to explain or evaluate the firm's risk assessment process. The examiner might be asking you to explain the firm's risk assessment process, or they might also be providing a scenario whereby you have to review the scenario and you have to give what all are the weaknesses that are being there in the audit firm that is being provided in the scenario, as well as you might need to provide recommendations for the same. So just keep this one in mind. When it comes to the firm's risk assessment process, it is nothing but the auditor is only concerned about creating a proper risk assessment that are specific to the client as well as the specific to the audit firm. Then the second one, that's the governance and leadership. So basically, when it comes to the governance and leadership, well, we know that every firm will have to maintain a good system of quality management. Then only they will be able to achieve their objectives with regarding the assurance or non-assurance engagement that they perform. So basically, when it comes to the assurance engagement, definitely the auditor will be facing multiple challenges, will be facing a lot of challenges with regarding the audit work that they undertake. So this can only be overcome by taking a team effort. Therefore, we have to create an environment. So the firm must have an environment which will demonstrate their commitment to quality. So well, we know that the quality management cannot be maintained individually by an auditor unless if they are not having support from the whole team in which they work. So it is a responsibility of the engagement partner or the managing partner of an audit to ensure that they have maintained a good system of quality management that will enable a firm to maintain a tone of the top. So this tone of the top will ensure that the quality management and its importance is known to every member of the engagement team. So basically, a firm have to develop the systems and policies that will enable every auditor to work properly. So basically, there will be reward systems in case if an employee or the team member of an engagement firm have properly followed the quality management systems, then he will be rewarded. So if we introduce this sort of system, it will help us to ensure that every auditor is overcoming each of the individual challenges that face while performing the engagement. Say for example, well, we know that there will be multiple ethical threats that every auditor have to face, and out of which the most important one is the self-interest threat. There are chances where the auditor might act in their own personal interest. So if we maintain a good tone of the top and if we maintain a good quality environment in the firm, we will be able to ensure that each of the auditors will overcome these individual limitations such as following the self-interest threat. So hereby, in case if we maintain a good governance and leadership environment, we will be able to ensure that every engagement will be able to provide an appropriate conclusion on the work that they perform. So that is why we are giving much more emphasis on the governance and leadership. So as an exam focus, here also you can expect questions. So basically they might be asking you for the importance of quality as well as the governance and leadership. And they might also ask you to identify deficiencies from the scenario on the basis of the governance and leadership. And they will ask you to provide recommendations as well. So just keep this one in mind. It is a responsibility of the engagement partner and the whole team members to ensure that they are having a good control environment. So which means that here the control environment is all with regarding the quality. They have to maintain a good environment where the importance of quality is being emphasized. So they must follow the quality requirements, they must maintain quality requirements, and they must also help others to maintain quality control related requirements. And that is all about the governance and leadership. And the next one is with regarding the ethical requirements. The standards of quality management requires that every firm have to maintain policies and objectives for the fulfillment of their ethical requirements. So basically, again, this will be purely beyond the basis of the firm as well as on the basis of the client. So well, we know that here the auditor requires that he should not maintain a specific safeguard for each of the common ethical threats. Instead, they have to take a safeguard purely be based on the firm as well as purely be based on the client. So it is not the necessity to have a proper set of safeguards that is common to every scenario. We will be focusing on each of the scenarios in where the client works. We will be focusing on each scenarios where the firm will be having multiple ethical issues, and we have to take safeguards that are specific to each of these engagements as well as for the client. So basically, when considering the safeguards as well as the ethical threats that might arise in each of the scenarios, it is a responsibility of the auditor to consider the ethical requirements in the jurisdiction in which the client works as well as the audit firm works. So well, we know that the ethical requirements and the code of ethics will be different on the basis of the jurisdiction in which each of the firm operates. So every firm have to first of all create a common understanding with regarding the ethical requirements in their jurisdiction. And once the ethical requirements have been listed down, we have to take adequate steps to ensure that each of these ethical requirements are being followed, and we are taking adequate safeguard to overcome each of the threats that we face while we are considering to follow the ethical requirements. So that is what it is being mentioned in the relevant ethical requirements. It is a responsibility of the every firm to ensure that they are following the ethical requirements, and they need to assess the risk that may face in following the ethical requirements, and they have to take a safeguard that will be specific to the audit firm as well as to the client portfolio. And when it comes to the exam approach, here the candidate will be given a quality management scenario whereby it will be having both ethical threats as well as a firm's quality management measures. So the candidate have to evaluate whether the firm have complied with both the quality management system as well as with the ethical requirements. And you have to identify and interpret that. And you have to also provide related safeguards if the scenario or the requirement demands. So you will be getting the technical mark as well as professional mark for this area. So you have to consider whether there is any breach in the system of quality management, and there can also be chances of having system in the code of ethics as well. So you have to consider both this, and you have to interpret your answer, and for it you will be getting adequate mark, which includes both the technical mark as well as the professional marks. So the very next one, that's acceptance and continuance of the client's relationship. So while accepting or continuing with the client's relationship, an auditor have to consider a number of factors. So well, ISQM 1 emphasizes on the importance of considering the acceptance and continuance of the client's relationship, and the firm must ensure that they will be able to achieve their quality management requirements while accepting or continuing with a client relationship. So here the point is that the auditor should not clearly focus only on the financial aspects while considering the acceptance or continuance of a client's relationship. Well, we know that rather than having a financial aspect, there will be multiple things to be considered before accepting or continuing with a client's relationship. Mainly, you must be able to understand the importance of the quality management. You must consider the importance of the ethical requirements, and you must ensure that you will be able to follow the same quality management principles while continuing with this particular engagement, or in case if you accept this particular engagement's new engagement work. And you must also ensure that you will be able to achieve all the ethical requirements while performing this engagement. You have to consider the legal and regulatory requirements for performing this engagement, and only if you will be able to perform this particular client's work appropriately, then only you should accept that engagement. That is what it is being required in the acceptance and continuance of the client's relationship. So basically, in case if it's an existing business relationship, then at the beginning of each year and before continuing the each year's new engagement, you must reassess all the factors that you have considered at the point where you have first taken this engagement client's work. So here you will be having fresh identity check, you will be reperforming the independence declaration of each of the employees. Then you will be re-evaluating the possibilities of having conflict of interest or the competence requirements, and you will be reassessing everything in order to ensure that you will be able to properly continue with this client's relationship, and only if you believe that you should accept that particular work again. And the main exam focus area here is a factor that the examiner will be asking you to identify the factors that you have to consider before accepting every client engagement work. So here, before accepting the new engagements work, the candidate should consider the legal, regulatory, and ethical consideration. Then you must also consider the availability of resources. In order to achieve an engagement work objectives, you must ensure that you will be having sufficient amount of resources for the purpose of achieving that. So you have to consider the resources, and the candidate should be focusing much more on the legal and professional requirements. Like there will be legal, regulatory, and ethical consideration that have been achieved in every engagement. So you must also emphasize more on that area as well. And again, the key point that the main consideration should not be the financial aspect. Definitely the auditor will also be considering the financial aspect, and they must be able to ensure that they will be able to recover all the expenses that they will be incurred during the course of engagement, and they must be quoting a fee that will be relevant for the purpose of recovering this audit fee. The audit expenses that will be incurred during the course of the audit. So that's one point. But in addition to that, or above all that, these points have to be considered while taking the decision to accept a particular client's engagement or while continuing with the existing relationship. And one thing should be kept in mind, that the decision to accept and continue a particular client's relationship should be always be focused much more on the quality aspect rather than on the financial aspects. Then the very next one, that's the engagement performance. So the engagement team must ensure that they have got adequate understanding with regarding the responsibilities for maintaining a quality audit. So basically, in case if an audit firm is having very less experienced audit team, the whole audit team should ensure that the less experienced audit team members are being supervised and reviewed. And it is the responsibility of the engagement partner to be involved throughout the audit, and he must take the ultimate responsibility for maintaining the quality within the engagement. The audit team should throughout the engagement maintain professional skepticism and professional judgment, and they must ensure that they are questioning each of the discrepancies that they have figured out during the course of an engagement. So all the team members have to be provided with sufficient amount of training. They must be properly being supervised, and they must be properly being directed while performing an engagement. So instructions have to be provided on how each things have to be undertaken, how each evidences have to be obtained and evaluated. So here the standards of quality management requires that a firm have to maintain a good engagement performance team. So the engagement team members will be properly being reviewed, and whenever there is a possibility for some sort of mistakes that might arise from each of the engagement team member, then proper review comments should be provided to ensure that they have got adequate knowledge with regarding the mistake that they have taken, as well as the corrective actions that they have to take in relation to the same. Thereby, we will be able to ensure that a quality audit report is being provided at the end of the audit work. Thereby, we will be able to maintain the public interest, as well as the trust on audit will be increased. So the system of quality management will ensure that the audit team consult on contentious matters, which means that there can be chances of having differences of opinion, there can be chances of having issues that they might face while performing an engagement. So all these have to be addressed by the engagement team as a whole, and each of the seniors, as well as the ultimate person who is responsible for the audit, that's the engagement partner, should ensure that the engagement performance are adequately maintained, and they will be able to provide a good engagement report at the end. So that's all about the engagement performance. The next one is with regarding the resources. It is the responsibility of the firm to ensure that they have got sufficient resources on timely manner. So the resources have to be evaluated before accepting an engagement, and while performing the engagement also they must ensure that the resources that they have considered at the beginning of the audit are still available for the purpose of properly performing the engagement and to provide an engagement report. So while considering the resources, we will be focusing on the employees more. We will be considering the competence of the employees. We will be considering the trainings that have been provided to them, the capabilities of them to perform each of the engagement. And the firm should ensure that they are using the most experienced individuals to work on areas which are in complex nature, as well as they must ensure that sufficient review are being performed by the senior members, and they are also provided with adequate time to sufficient testing and analyze the issues with regarding the engagement. So in case if the audit team is not having sufficient resources, they must also consider having resources taken from the external areas. Say for example, they can use the work of an expert in order to meet the requirements with regarding the resources. So he will be also having multiple questions that you can expect in the exam. Basically, the candidate might be asked to review the scenario or go through the scenario, and they might have to pick the situations in which there are no appropriate resources available, and definitely you have to provide the recommendations with regarding each of the non-availability of the resources. So this is how it will be tested during the course of your exam. So from the perspective of the standard, just keep in mind that the standard requires every engagement to have adequate amount of resources that will help them to enable to achieve their objectives with regarding the engagement. That's it. Then the next one is the information and communication. So when it comes to the information and communication, it is the most important element or the component of the system of quality management. Because unless if the things are properly being communicated to the engagement team members, they must not be able to ensure that other components are also operating properly. So basically when it comes to the information and communication, So this requires that the engagement team should properly obtain, generate, and use the information and should communicate the information within the firm. Let it be within the firm or outside the firm, both things will be considered here. So basically, ISQM 1 requires that there must be proper communications be made within the firm in order to ensure that they meet the quality requirements. Say for example, in case if a new quality control policy or procedure are being adopted by the engagement team, and if it is not being discussed and known to all the persons within the engagement team, definitely we cannot ensure that everyone is following the same. So it is a responsibility of the whole engagement team members to ensure that proper communications are being made with regarding the quality management process or with regarding the system of quality management. So there will also be communications that are made to the outside parties, such as with those charged with governance as well as with the management. So that are also being included within the information communication. So here there are the list of things that you have to communicate with regarding the system of quality management. So when it comes to the ethical and professional requirements, there should be proper communications be made with regarding the firm's policies on ethics, training material, registers of training undertaken, as well as with regarding the completed independence declaration should also be properly documented. Then there will be several communication and information with regarding the client acceptance and continuance, like the risk assessment will be documented. The client identity document will be obtained from the client and will be stored properly. There will be engagement letters being issued, as well as when it comes to the engagement performance, there will be proper audit program drafted and produced. There will be proper role or assignments delegated and recorded. So thereby they will be emphasizing on each of the roles that each employees of the or each members of the engagement team have to be provided with, and there will be client information obtained. And in case if a computer-based audit approach is being followed by the firm, they will be inputting it in the computer audited tools, automated audit tools. Then there will be conclusions that are being documented in the audit file or within the working papers, and there will be several reports to be made to the management as well as with those charged with governance. And with these regards, there will be quality management system will be maintained, and they will ensure that proper information and communication are being done to ensure that they are obtaining, generating, and using and communicating the information within the firm with regarding each of the client's engagement. So the communication should be made in timely manner. Unless if the communications are not made on timely manner, they will not be able to ensure that the other components are operating properly, and thereby they will not be able to ensure that the quality management are being maintained, and they will be able to ensure that the quality management will not be able to provide a systematic approach for the purpose of performing the audit engagement. And very finally, it's a monitoring and remediation process. So it is nothing but it is a responsibility of the engagement team to ensure that all other components are being reviewed on timely basis, and they are ensuring that the corrective action should be taken if any of the components are not operating properly. So they must be reviewing whether the resource availability are being properly reviewed. Then the firm is properly performing the risk assessment process, whether they are considering the ethical requirements while performing the engagement. They must ensure that the engagement performance are being properly carried out, the information and communications are being properly generated, and they are being properly being provided to each of the required parties. And all this have to be properly being monitored, and in case of any issues that they find with regarding the maintained system of quality management, necessary corrective action should also be taken. And if it is not done, we will not be able to ensure that the company is maintaining a good system of quality management. So that is what all about the system of monitoring and remediation process. So these all are the 8 systems or the 8 components of the system of quality management in order to ensure that a firm will meet all the requirements with regarding the ISQM 1, and they will be able to produce a very good quality assurance report or the engagement report after performing an engagement. So as a conclusion, it is the duty of every firm to maintain the system of quality management, and this quality management system have to be reviewed and should be specific to an engagement firm as well as to a client. So every firm should follow ISQM 1 from now on, and it is the duty of the students to consider whether the ISQM 1 requirements are being followed by each of the client that are being provided in our exam scenario. And in case if they are not following the requirements, then the recommendations on how it have to be should be provided there. And in addition to that, there can also be chances where the examiner might require you to explain each of the components, or they might ask you with regarding the changes in the ISQM 1 from ISQC. So you must have a clear understanding with regarding each of the elements or the components of the system of quality management. So you can do one thing, you may kindly go through the ACCA Global website. So the same file that I've just projected is taken from the ACCA website. These are the raw standards or the changes that the ACCA have given us with regarding the recent changes in the ISQM 1. So please go through that and ensure that you are preparing properly for your exam. All the very best, guys. Do well.